Welcome to Community Conversations. I'm your host, Steve Mantis, and my guest today is Mark Bentz, a councillor with the City of Thunder Bay. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Thanks so much for coming on the show. I've contacted a number of newly elected city councillors, and you're the first up. But you've got a bit of an advantage because you are not only a new city councillor, you spent some time on city council some years ago.
I did from 2003 to 2014.
11 years.
Yeah, 11 years. And before that, I was a school board trustee in the 90s. So, yeah, a little bit of elected experience.
So you're an old hand now.
Well, I don't know. I've got a little bit under my belt. Can help.
So tell us a little bit about your background. Did you grow up in Thunder Bay?
Yes, I grew up in Thunder Bay and went to school in Thunder Bay. And after university, I went down and lived in Montreal and Ottawa area for a little bit. Came back and started getting involved in the community.
So why did you come back? I mean, Montreal is a pretty cool place.
It is a cool place. There was a lot of issues with regards to separation when I was there, but no, I wanted to get back to raise my family near family. That was the key reason for me is to raise my children near their extended family.
And so, how many children did you have?
I have two sons. Yeah, I have Daniel and Eric, 25 and 22, I believe. They just turned. It goes quickly, but yeah, I can't believe I've got. Children in their 20s. It goes fast.
Yeah. And you went to university at Lakehead?
I did. I went to Lakehead, and I went a couple of times to Lakehead. Just after high school, I went and got a degree in physics. And then later in my life, when I discovered that I liked to teach and instruct, because I was doing a lot of corporate training, I went back and got my bachelor's in education. And I'm now an instructor at the college, and I'm also a high school teacher.
Terrific.
Yeah, it's been a good career.
So you got involved as a public figure, a public servant or elected official. I'm not sure how that all fits.
Yeah.
But it seems like you pretty much serve the public.
Yes.
Even if they don't pay you much for it.
Right, yeah. Even less on the school board.
Yeah, that's right. So when did you get involved first on the school board?
That was 1994, I believe. I was on that. I was on the board for 3 years. Enjoyed it quite a bit. But during my time on the board, I got a job that involved a lot of international travel, and I couldn't maintain both. I had to kind of depart with the career because I just could not do both. So I chose the career path, and it was an interesting career. A lot of travel, and I enjoyed it a lot.
And so now you're back in Thunder Bay with less travel, and you're thinking
Yes.
about public service again.
Yeah. When that role, when the travel of that role diminished, which was 5 or 6 years later, I got re-involved. I got involved and ran for council at that. So I had always had an interest in the community and trying to help it do better and to help people. So that's something I've always been interested in. I kind of knew from an early age that I'd like to try that. So I kind of got my feet wet with the school board and enjoyed it. And then when the opportunity came again, I thought, well, let's try for city council.
So that was 2003.
2003, yeah.
So how do you feel? Have you been helping people? And so what ways? How do you see that role as helping?
I mean, a democracy is basically you're taking information from the community and trying to implement decisions that will do the greatest good. And when we make decisions, I think every decision is a way to help the community. Some are very large and impactful, some are small. But you just having a voice there and caring and being able to talk to people and influence decisions, I think that it's a satisfying role. It's not for everyone, that's for sure, but I certainly enjoy it.
So we know that they're seen as a city councillor as kind of a part-time position. The financial benefits are based on, I don't know what, 1 or 2 days a week, maybe, something
Yeah,
like that.
I think that's reasonable, yeah.
What do you really put into it? I hear from some folks that it's almost a full-time job.
Well, it depends on your personality and how you approach things. Some people do make it a full-time job, and certainly they're welcome to do so. I've never treated it as a full-time job. I treat it as something that I do, as required to get the results that we need and the results that people need from me. And so, yeah, I think your portrayal of a couple of days a week would be accurate for those that are wondering what's involved in serving your community. It's not I would like to say it's not an overwhelming task. It's, I would like more people to consider it because it isn't overwhelming. And that's my experience with it. I'm pretty good with time management. I was raising children, had a full-time job, and was on council, and it was not an overwhelming experience for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, when you first ran in 2003, you were elected as a representative of...
I was a ward councillor in Northwood.
Okay.
In 2003, and loved serving the ward. And the wards are a good place to get an introduction to politics and to how it all works, because you can really visit many people in the ward and get to know what's going on there, and they get to know you. So yeah, that's how I chose to get started within the ward.
And for those first, how many years was it? 13 years?
11.
11 years?
Yeah, 11.
11 years. Were you a ward councillor for that whole time period, or did that change?
No, that did not change. Initially, I was very interested in ward issues like saving Churchill Pool. I got behind that, and we did all sorts of things like that. But as I was on council longer, my interests started to broaden into the entire community, and that's what prompted me to run at large this time. I'm more of a big picture person, and not to say that ward councillors are not, but I have a sense of that I want to serve the entire city, and not get into just small items in certain pockets of the city. Although you do that as an at-large councillor, but certainly I'm interested in the big picture. And now I'm more focused on the budget as a whole, the organization. How I want to look at certain things this term of council, including how the city wants to elect its representatives. I think that's an important piece that we revisit. It hasn't been revisited for decades.
So it sounds like you're feeling there is a significant difference between being a ward councillor and at large.
Well, you're freer to look at the broad issues. Not that ward councillors can't, but that's kind of the way I see the role as an at-large councillor is you've got the whole city to consider, and you've got all the policies behind, how we govern as a whole there. That's kind of what I'm interested in this time around.
Okay. We're going to take a short break. Please stay with us. We'll come back and explore what some of those big issues are that City Council is dealing with. Welcome back to Community Conversations. I'm your host, Steve Mantis, and my guest today is Mark Bentz, City Councillor for the City of Thunder Bay. Welcome back, Mark.
Thank you.
So we were just talking about some of those priority areas, kind of looking at the big picture for the City of Thunder Bay.
Mm-hmm.
And the sense I was getting from you was that, in a way, part of the role you see as a city councillor in the city is creating a community that works for the citizens.
Yes.
That was kind of going, okay, how does this fit in with helping people, and that kind of makes sense to me, right? Like that we're trying to have a place where people feel at home and safe and can carry on their daily lives.
Yeah.
So what are the big things that the city does to facilitate that?
Well, probably one of the biggest things that we do and one of the biggest spends we have is emergency services. And that is like the foundational feeling of safety for people, right? Knowing you can call someone if you're in trouble, knowing that if you're hurt, there's someone to call, all those things. So yeah, making sure those emergency services are working effectively and cost effectively is certainly a big thing we do.
Now, what's included in emergency services?
Well, there'd be EMS, which is the paramedics, there'd be fire service and police. So those are the three main cogs in that machine.
Okay.
And yeah, that is important to people, and we need to make sure those are functioning well. And with that, we have a feeling of safety. You know, safety is for most people a subjective thing. You know,
Totally.
How safe do you feel? Well, if you have good services and you live in a community that is addressing issues that it has, and I think there are issues we need to address in our community, then people feel like we're moving forward and things are going in a positive way.
So you said this is a significant part of the budget. How much?
Yeah.
How much of the budget goes to emergency services?
I would take probably half of our budget.
And what's our global budget for the city approximately?
It's at
Around
300 million.
300 million.
It's a big budget.
That's more than I've got.
Yeah.
So we're looking at about 150 million that goes to emergency services.
On that order, I would think. Yeah, I might be off
rough
by a
numbers.
little bit, but yeah, it's a big portion of your taxes is supporting those organizations.
And those are, in a way, like the name says, emergency. There's not something you count on you do count on it every day. You don't use it very often. But
Yeah.
when you need it, there it is. Your house
Yep.
is on fire. You need the ambulance. You need, the police. Okay.
Yeah.
There they are. So everything else that goes into creating that community has to come out of the other half of
Yeah.
that budget.
Yeah. Yeah, and those are important pieces too. They're definitely what makes a community. The services that are provided, the facilities that exist, how beautification that's being put into a community it gives people a sense of place.
And safety. I'm thinking about, as I get older, the snow and ice on the ground
Yeah.
is more and more of a concern to me.
Yep.
And for folks with disabilities too.
For sure.
So I'm kind of thinking, having the sidewalk plowed nice is something for 5 months is a key to my safety.
Yeah.
You have to kind of make these decisions like where to spend. Or people might say, geez, there's always ways we can improve on our sidewalks or plowing the roads. Same with police. How do you decide? Like, do we have enough money to do all those things we need to do? Or?
Well, it's a process. The decisions are always done in a process, and we try and use a process that is logical. We have administrators, of course, that are monitoring the situation closely and are the front line, and they give us good information as to what should be happening in a city. The governance that we provide as a council is to determine if this is the levels of service that the community wants, and if the community wants a higher level of service, we request them to come up with how to and how much. And that's essentially how it works, and it's just an ever rebalancing scale, if you will. There's always demands that are being requested, and then there's always reductions, expansions. So it's a moving target, depending on the demographics, and as you mentioned, like as you age, things become more important to you, and so there's always a need for that rebalancing. And that's kind of what council's involved in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so it looks like over the last 25 years or so, we've seen consistent downloading from our federal government onto our provincial government, and our provincial government onto our our local, municipal, and communities without maybe extra revenue to go to cover those. So here it is in Thunder Bay. That's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak.
Yes.
You've been involved for a number of years now, both on and off council. How have you seen that? What's that trajectory look like?
It certainly downloading is occurring and continues to occur to some extent. It was probably like when they shifted the school responsibility from the community to the province, and we took on a lot more healthcare related things. And if you look at the numbers, I mean, the cost of education is going down because of our demographics. The costs of health are going up because our demographics. So somebody with in the higher order governments, did something that they thought would be beneficial to them, and maybe it was. But in the end, the levels of government are all teams. We have the municipal level, we have the provincial level, we have the federal level, and they're all players in the well-being of any community. And we've had great success in partnering with the other levels of government, and they are our partners. There's no two ways about it.
Well, how about for the folks on the lower end of the economic picture? We're here in food banks, as an example, have just been growing and growing and growing. Our shelter house, growing and growing the demand. Our hospital, can't meet up with the demand. So how does that play out? I mean, is that part of that impact that where we used to have money for some of these services, we don't anymore, and now it's up to the community to pitch in? Is that part of it, or what?
Well, certainly it is. I mean, somebody's got to come to the table, and the municipal government is closest to the people, and we are involved in a lot of funding of various things in the health sector, in the social well-being sector now, that maybe we weren't long ago, when we were just concerned mostly about getting the roads built and water to houses in the pipes. So it's a much more complex organization, and that's not a bad thing, because maybe you want some of those features close to the people, so they can have a stronger voice in those. And so there is a shift going on. Municipal governments are definitely involved in a lot of more complicated areas now.
Mark, we have to take a short break. Please stay with us. We'll be right back and find out some more of those tricky issues here in the city of Thunder Bay. Welcome back to Community Conversations. I'm your host, Steve Mantis, and our guest today is Mark Bentz, City Councillor with the City of Thunder Bay. Welcome back, Mark.
Thank you.
So, in the previous segment, you're talking about a number of the challenges and the priorities we have, and you guys as city councillors have to make the decisions, and a lot of them revolve around the budget. We've just been through the budget process. Has it been approved now? It's now set. Got the approval on there.
Yeah, it's ratified.
And so you might have a number of reflections in terms of the budgeting, like you were involved back in the day, you took a break, you're at it again, your first budget, but then there's all kinds of other factors involved. So what do you see are some of the priority areas you're looking at in terms of the budgeting process?
Well, the priority area that I'm looking at is to get our budgets to come in at inflationary levels this term of council. And it's something that I was interested in my previous involvement. And there was a time when we would start a budget and they would say, well, we're projecting an increase of 8%. I mean, you say that now, and then there would be a real backlash. So we started out at a little over 3% and got it down to 2%. So there's a real willingness on council to make our budgets reflect inflationary pressures that the average citizen sees.
And I think inflation this past year was like 2.3%. 2.3 or 2.6
Yeah, it was hovering
or
around
something?
2. Yeah, it depends what time frame you're looking at, but
Okay.
but 2 in the 2s is or the low 2s or around 2 is probably where it was for consumer price index for Thunder Bay, and I think that's a good measure to kind of set our goals for. So that's what I feel is important. That when I was campaigning last fall, certainly that was a loud and clear message. Is taxation needs to be controlled. We understand spending it provides programming and such, but we need to be very cautious about what programs we're providing, at what levels, and what cost increases we can sustain over the long term. I don't believe what Canada and the Western world has been doing for past few decades is sustainable. Our debt is growing.
Like the government debt, you mean?
Government
or
debt.
What are you talking
yeah,
about?
even personal debt. But yeah, on the government side, certainly you have high levels of debt, and these debts need to be repaid. I mean, I think that's what we all need to understand, and we're paying interest on them, and the interests that we're paying are robbing us of services.
So does the city of Thunder Bay have a debt that we're paying against as well?
Yes, it does, and we're paying. I can't remember the exact number. I think we debenture probably $6 or $7 million a year. That's like a loan that we take out to provide primarily infrastructure, but we're paying millions of dollars in debt charges. The Ontario government is paying millions upon millions, and the federal government is paying even more. So a lot of the tax money that you spend is paying off interest. So
So we should buy bank stocks.
well, a lot of people do. Banks are doing well.
Gosh.
Banks are doing well. But yeah, interest costs. I'm not saying that debt doesn't have a place in like long-term projects that provide real value to the community and return on investment, all those sorts of things. But we should always be very wary of loaning money to provide service levels, because when you borrow money year over year and your debt continues to grow, that is not a sustainable financial policy. Mm-hmm. And that concerns me. Sure.
And it's one that our whole society is like bought into.
We have bought into it.
Like I went to a workshop last year, and I was the only one out of 35 people who didn't have debt.
Yes.
I couldn't believe it.
I know.
I was the only one.
Yeah, and I think that's reflected in our government spending, and it seems to be like systemic. The debt levels that exist personally and at the municipal level, the provincial, the federal.
Well, we're encouraged over and over to borrow money.
We are.
We can,
Yeah.
no problem. You could buy a new car for 40 grand. You don't need hardly any money at all. Just
Yes, I know.
sign
And,
here.
and in 2008, we all got a bit of a wake-up call with the financial crisis that came of reckless financial policies and spending where maybe you shouldn't be.
So what do you have, like, when you look at the budget, what are debt servicing charges? We should keep it within 1%? Or do
Well,
you have those kind of
yes,
framework you're looking at?
There are frameworks that exist at the city for that, and but this doesn't even begin to talk about what we call the infrastructure gap, which is the amount we should be spending on our infrastructure to maintain it, compared to what we're doing, and currently that's over $20 million. So if you were to look at the last budget for 2019, and these numbers are always evolving, but let's say $25 million underspent on maintaining what we own.
So in the best of all worlds, you would have had another 25 million in this year's budget just for infrastructure maintenance to kind
Maintenance,
of keep it,
that's
keep
right.
it up.
That's not even building new things. That's just to make sure that it doesn't degrade and cost us more in the future. And the infrastructure gap is something that's quite a hot topic, municipally, federally, provincially, and it is real. And it is kind of, well, we'll worry about it tomorrow. But more and more of us are saying, no, you can't keep pushing that off. We have to deal with it. And we are formulating a plan to deal with that locally. And the province is as well. So that's a good news story, but it is going to cost money. Money we may not have.
Well, and that's kind of the crux. I'm kind of going like, all right, so that sounds like it's like a 8 or 9% increase if we were to do that in the budget.
At least, it's probably closer 10 to 15.
And so people, as you say, would be all up in arms.
Yeah.
But at some point, we have to face it.
We have to face it, yes, and we're just at the beginnings of understanding it. I think the numbers are always being refined, and to the service or the levels of maintenance need to be refined, but we can be sure that we're not spending what we should be on infrastructure.
Mark, we're out of time. If people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to do that?
My email at the city, mbentz@thunderbay.ca.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. You're going to have to come back and talk about this further.
Certainly.
Thanks so much for watching, and stay safe. See you again next week.